Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to Germany once again, to the state of Bavaria and the very small town of Reising just to the south of Munich. Actually very close to the airport in fact, but many of you will know that this is home to the world's oldest brewery, Bayrische Staatsbrauerei Weihenstephan, and today we are going to have a taste of their Vitus beer, which is the Weizenbock one. Very highly rated on RateBeer and BeerAdvocate.com, so definitely one you want to try if you get the chance. And to mark this review, I'm wearing my Deutsche Nationalmannschaft t-shirt. I don't have the one that they used when they were winning the World Cup, unfortunately, but hopefully I can get that and put Klose's name on the back of it. One of my favourite players, in fact. But anyway, as is usual with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very brief history of the brewery. It will only be 2 or 3 minutes long, but if you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. The brewery website's in the video description for you below, along with a link to my other Weihenstephan reviews I've done for you before, and there are going to be a few more added to that in the future, because there are still 2 or 3 beers I think I'm still to review from these guys. But anyway, as many of you will know, the oldest brewery in the world, their official start date is the year 1040. However, their history actually goes a bit before that. The origins of the brewery trace back to the year 725, when Saint Corbinian and 12 of his companions founded a Benedictine monastery on the Neerberg hill, and thus the art of brewing was born at Weihenstephan. So the first historical reference to the Weihenstephan was in the year 768, and at this time there was a hop garden in the vicinity of the Weihenstephan monastery, and the owner of this hop garden actually had to pay a tithe of 10% to the monastery. I think it was just a kind of tax, if you like, an early form of tax. But in 955 the Weihenstephan monastery was plundered and destroyed by the Huns, which laid the foundation of a tradition of the Benedictine monks repeatedly having to reconstruct their monastery. In 1040 though, their beer brewing officially began in Weihenstephan after Abbot Arnold obtained a license to brew and sell beer from the city of Reising, thus marking the birth of the Weihenstephan Monastery Brewery. The official birth, of course, mind you, because they were doing a few things before that. But between 1085 and 1463, the Weihenstephan Monastery really didn't have much luck at all. It burnt down a total of 4 times, was destroyed or depopulated by 3 different plagues and also various famines, and it also suffered a great earthquake as well. So following in the tradition of the Huns in 955, Emperor Ludwig the Bavarian destroyed the monastery in the year 1336. This was repeated by the French and the Swedes during the 30 Years' War, which was a kind of the 1640s, I believe, was roughly the sort of time you're talking about there. But then the Austrians also destroyed it during the Spanish succession as well. But the monks didn't give up, however, thankfully, and they continued to rebuild their monastery and brewery time and again, even managing to refine their brewing art during this kind of turbulent period, I guess. But in the year 1516, Duke Wilhelm IV of Bavaria issued the Bavarian Purity Law, and thus only barley, hops and water were allowed to be used in Bavarian beer. But the brewery say that this law had a major influence on their beer, and as of course you'll know, this turned into the Reinheitsgebot, which tends to go all the way through Germany these days. But unfortunately the Weihenstephan monastery was dissolved in March 1803 during the course of secularisation in Germany, and the possessions and rights of the brewery were then transferred to the Bavarian state, but the drinkers of Weihenstephan continued to drink the Weihenstephan beer under the secular supervision of the royal holdings of Schleißheim. In 1852, however, the Central Agricultural School moved from Schleißheim to Weihenstephan, taking with it the Bavarian brewing students, and in 1895 the school became an academy and was elevated in 1919 to the University of Agriculture and Brewing, which was later incorporated into the Technical University of Munich in 1930, which of course is one of the world's best universities today, and they do still teach brewing at Weihenstephan, so you can go there and actually learn how to brew your own beer if you like. But Weihenstephan was thus developed into a centre of world brewing technology, and a fact that did massive favours for the reputation of the Bayrische Staatsbrauerei Weihenstephan. In 1921 the brewery became known as the Bavarian State Brewery Weihenstephan officially, and since 1923 it's used the Bavarian State seal on its labels, and you can see that just up here. The other ones other than the Vitus, the other beers, do show it in a bit more prominence if you like, but you can get the idea of it. But anyway, that's your kind of brief history of the Bayrische Staatsbrauerei Weihenstephan. Just to list the other beers you can get from these guys before we get to the tasting, they do have quite an extensive range, but of course they are very well known for their hefty Hefeweizen beers. So they have the Kristallweiss beer, which is a green label beer, a filtered Hefeweizen, Hefeweiss beer, which is a blue label, Naturtrub I would guess you would call it, Hefeweiss beer Dunkel, which is a dark wheat beer, Hefeweiss beer Lech, which is a light wheat beer, Corbinian, which is the Doppelbock. I'm still to review this one for you. They have the Original, which is a Münchner Helles. Very nice bready beer. They also have a Pilsner, the Oktoberfest beer, which is a Märzen, and the Winterfest beer, which is a Saison beer. But they also do a Radler and an original and Hefeweizen beer in non-alcoholic variety as well. So a big range of beer is available from Weihenstephan, but the most common one I think you're likely to find is probably the blue label or the green label one, the Naturtrub and the Kristall. But the Dunkel one isn't too hard to find either. Ones like this are a bit more rare to find, such as the Pils and the Corbinian and things. But anyway, let's move on to the tasting of this beer itself. I'll just bring up the camera, let you have a little quick look at the artwork. You can see on this one, the label on this is slightly different to the other ones. You can see, I think that might be St. Corbinian on the top of the label there. So please tell me about that if any of you do happen to know, but I think it is St. Corbinian. You can see the sort of gold cockerel sitting on his book there. It's probably his Bible actually if it's St. Corbinian, but it looks very, very nice. You can see the Bavarian state seal just on the top of the label there, but very, very nicely presented. And this is in fact one of the best Weizenbock beers you're going to find around. It's actually a bit of a different style from the Aventinus, I think, as well. So you can see that is the typical Bayrische Staatsbrauerei bottle cap on this one. They're all different colours depending on what beer you get, but yeah, it looks very nice. So this guy is a 7.7% Weizenbock, and let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting then. So as you can see, a nice smoky opening on this one, a little bit of carbonation just coming up to the top, but as you open it you can really smell the nice kind of wheaty flavours coming out of this one, or wheaty aromas I should say. It's actually a lot lighter than I thought it was going to be. When you hear the term Weizenbock, and when I think back to the Aventinus and things like that, you would always think it's a little bit darker than it is. But as you can see, we'll get the rest of it out in a minute, but as you can see, it's poured a very, very nice kind of pale goldeny straw colour. Actually, it is transparent. If I put my fingers behind it, you can see right through it. There is a little bit of sediment floating around in there, and that's just because I've had it in the fridge, but you can see there's a nice two-fingered head on this one. But yeah, it looks very nice. The carbonation, there's a lot of little bubbles and going up towards the bottom of the head, but some bigger bubbles sticking to the side of the glass too, so it looks a very, very nice beer. So let's get a look at the aroma on this one. So as you'd expect from Weihenstephan in particular, and of course from the Weizenbock style, you've got a nice big, sort of, not a Belgian yeast, but a kind of nice big Bavarian sweet yeast on this one. I keep saying Belgian yeast because it's such a kind of quality you would expect from Belgian beers. Even though this isn't a Belgian beer, whenever I smell a yeasty aroma like this, I always think to Belgian beer. But it's a strictly German beer, this one, I should point out. But you've got a nice big sweet yeasty character in this one. A little bit of the banana sweetness that you would expect, but you can get a good bit of the wheat in there. It's a big bready aroma, this one. Very malt forward, as you would expect. But there's a nice little bit of kind of clovey spice and grassy and citrusy hop in there too. So it has everything you would expect of it. The only other thing I would expect from the Weizenbock a little bit would have been some caramel, but you can't really pick that up too much in the aroma. It's more to do with the bread, the yeast, the banana, and a good bit of kind of clove spice in there too, but you're getting the typical elements you would expect of a nice grassy and citrusy hop. It's probably Hallertau or even maybe Tettnanger hops, but I guess it's probably more likely to be Hallertau that are used in this one because they are local. So let's get the last bit of this in and then we'll get on with the tasting here. So you can see there's a good little bit of sediment in the bottom of this one, but it looks very, very nice. So just check that the camera's picking this up right again before we get on with the tasting, and there we go. So yeah, this is the Weizenbock, the Vitus Weizenbock from Bayrische Staatsbrauerei Weihenstephan. We'll toast to the Deutsche Nationalmannschaft for being the Weltmeisters Jahr 2014, I believe is the right way to say that. So Prost to the German national team. So yeah, I've tried this beer before, but it's been a very, very long time. But Rate Beer and Beer Advocate tell the truth on this one. It really is a magnificent beer, and I actually get a little bit of nostalgia with this one because I think I've tried it 2 or 3 times before, and I just remember what it tastes like as soon as it goes in your mouth. It's one of these things. But yeah, much like the aroma with this one, you've got a nice big sweet yeasty character in it. There's a good bit of banana in there as well, and it just kind of, that kind of bready yeasty character just blankets the middle of your palate around there, and there is some kind of clove and slightly peppery spice in there. But what's interesting about this one in comparison to the other Weihenstephan beers, this has a big, slightly boozy caramel presence in there too, so there's some nice kind of grainy, biscuity characteristics coming out in there too, but you really will taste the kind of sweet caramel. There's a sweet bit of caramel just goes right down the middle of the tongue, and that's where the alcohol warmth in this one is, that's where you'll find that. But it is 7.7%, so it's a good bit heavier than the other ones. The other ones are usually about 5% roughly. But yeah, absolutely beautiful beer. Like the aroma, like I say, you get a big bready blanket across the tongue there, some nice sweet banana flavours and a good bit of yeast in there as well. You can pick up the wheat, the real kind of Hefeweizen characteristics coming out in this one, with some nice clove and peppery spice. But the real distinguishing thing about this beer in comparison to the other Weihenstephan ones is the kind of caramel, the sweet caramel malt base, and a little bit of biscuity grain in there as well. It's very, very nicely done. But around the edge of the palate, you are getting the typical sort of slightly, it's not actually even quite acidic in this one. This one is less on the acidic side than some of the other Weihenstephans, but you're getting a nice grassy hop, and particularly when you move round to the front arch of the tongue there, you're getting a nice kind of sweet citrusy feel out of this one. Yeah, that caramel character really pushes towards the front of the tongue. You'll feel this little oily bubble moving towards the front of your palate there, and you get this kind of nice mix between a slightly caramel, big boozy caramel flavour with a little bit of citrusy hop in there. The freshness and the hop character around the edges of the tongue really is very nice in this one, and that kind of caramel boozy character helps make your, at the very back of your palate, it helps kind of bridge the transition between going from the malt base of this beer into the nice kind of grassy hops in there. The grass hop in this is very smooth, and the citrusy character is actually quite rich in comparison. It's not sharp and acidic at all, it is very rich, and I think the kind of caramel base that you have on this one kind of blends that together very well. Many people, of course, when they think about German beer, when you hear the word Bock, you always think it's going to be a very, a sort of very, very dark roasted beer. But the regular Bock, that's of course talking about a Doppelbock. A regular Bock beer tends to be a bit more bready and caramelly, and a little bit less on the kind of fruity esters. It's almost as just if it's just a kind of toned down version of the Doppelbock beer, if you like. So to have a Weizenbock where you've got the kind of combination of a Hefeweizen and a kind of regular Bock beer, it works very, very well. So it's a very interesting style actually. But yeah, this is an absolutely beautiful beer, and I would recommend you try it. So if you like your German beer styles, then definitely give this one a go, particularly when it's from such a famous brewery. But in terms of the mouthfeel, this one, it's mid-bodied. It's actually a little bit heavier. It could well be pushing the full-bodied, the sort of full-bodied characteristic, if you like, and that's simply because of how big the caramel mouthfeel in this one is. So you've got a big feel in the beer in this one, but it's got a nice kind of crisp yet smooth carbonation, and the carbonation actually helps bring out the fruity flavours and the grassy hop flavours a little bit more around the edges of the palate. But as you would expect, it's a hugely malty beer, a nice big caramel sweetness in it too, but at the same time, despite it being very heavy in the malts, it actually does feel quite fresh, and they've done the citrusy flavours and the grassiness in this one very, very well. So it's a very well balanced beer with some beautiful flavours. And it really is worth trying if you do get the chance. Weihenstephan, as I told you, are very well known, particularly for the Hefeweizen beers, so you're not going to be disappointed with anything you try from them. But it's interesting to try the Bock beer, the Pils, and the Original, the Helles and things. All of their beers are very good, regardless of the style. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. It's been really cool to review such a famous beer for you again. And I really would recommend that you try this one. Weizenbock is quite an unusual style that you don't find very often, and this is a really kind of supreme example of it. So if you're into your German beer and you haven't tried this one, give it a go, because it really is magnificent. So as always, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. Let me know in the comment section below your own thoughts on the beer. I always enjoy reading them, but in the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff, and I will catch you soon with my next video. Slàinte.